All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be here for another C-suite chat conversation. These conversations are being brought to you all in partnership with the New York Urban League and C-suite Coach. As you all are aware, our conversation for today, which is a hot topic, is influence without authority. And this is our third C-suite chat of the year. And I should let you all know that we have three more before we wrap up the year. And one thing we've been doing differently this year, this is our second year doing this, the New York Urban League in partnership with C-Suite Coach. We've introduced three different tracks. So today falls under individual contributor. And then we also have a people manager track and then a team collaboration track. So keep an eye out for future conversations so you can join us. But for today, I'm excited I say often I play a dual role. Sandra Garcia Green, and I do play the role of a coach under C-Suite Coach, but also a program manager for Urban League, and it's always great to bring together work that I'm personally passionate about, and excited that we are able to do this with Angelina Darasaw, who is the founder and the owner of C-Suite Chat. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Angelina. She is going to tell us a little bit more about C-Suite Coach and the work that she does there. And then we'll also introduce our speakers and get the conversation started.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sandra. I'm Angelina Darasaw, everyone, the founder and CEO of C-Suite Coach, and really excited to be here today. Really grateful to New York Urban League for this ongoing opportunity to connect with you all and bring industry executives and thought leaders together with coaches from our network, our C-suite coaches, to talk about what matters to working professionals today. And quickly, just about C-Suite Coach, we are an organizational development consultancy that builds leadership development programs and helps provide support so that we can lead for now, we can lead for the future. We also have executive coaching services and really are focused on building better workplaces. And this topic that we're chatting about today is completely on theme. And so excited to get the conversation going as we think about influence and what does influence mean in an organization? Does it matter if you have the title? Can you still manage up? Can you still share your influence and get your ideas to the forefront? And so that's what we'll be chatting about. I will check the chat consistently. So make sure you drop in your questions. Make sure you share your comments. We'll make sure that we acknowledge you and let us know where you're from, what your role is. And we want to get to know you too. But as we dive in, I want to make sure I introduce our amazing panelists that we have here today. And first up, we have Tony Pringley, who is a sustainable fashion advocate and emerging philanthropist who's passionate about helping others align their corporate careers with purpose-driven projects. She works in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging at a major luxury brand, jewelry brand, helping lead initiatives that drive employee engagement and global philanthropy. Tony is also the founder of Swapped, an organization that curates clothing swap events to promote sustainable fashion, build community, and support local nonprofits. I need to get to one of those events. And she also serves on the National Leadership Council of SEO, Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, supporting fundraising and awareness efforts. Through all her work, Tony champions impact, connection, and the power of an authentic personal brand. So welcome, Tony.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And also with us, we have Mike. So Mike Thompson is a seasoned professional with over 2 decades of experience in training and development, talent management, organizational development, and coaching, having spent half of that time leading teams in large organizations across diverse industries such as insurance, healthcare, hospitality, manufacturing, including both domestic and foreign-owned firms. Throughout his career, he has served as an internal and external coach, guiding leaders from first-time supervisors to executives in areas like emotional intelligence, leadership branding, and cross-cultural effectiveness, often employing a strengths-based approach to maximize impact. Mike holds an undergraduate degree in psychology from Tulane and an MBA from the University of Virginia, complemented by numerous professional certifications in leadership coaching, assessments, and human capital strategy. He is based in Los Angeles County with his wife and 2 children, although now he is almost an empty nester. We're excited for him. He's also an avid movie fan who enjoys reading, travel, teams, and cycling. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So it's good to have both of you today. And I want to just kick off the conversation with asking each of you in your own words, what does it really mean to have influence? And especially when you think about it in the lane of authority, when you don't have that title, how can you still have influence? And why is this a skill that's critical for us to master now? And Tony, we'll kick it off with you.
Yeah, so again, thank you so much for having me here for the conversation. Super excited to dive into today's topic. And really to me, influencing without authority is really the art of like getting things done through trust and not titles, right? It's about reading the room, building those real connections, and making your ideas matter, regardless of where you sit in the organizational chart. So sometimes in organizations, we feel like you have to be C-suite or you have to be a certain title to influence. And I'm totally against that. I don't believe that. I think you can influence no matter where you are in the organization. And right now, it's everything. Teams are super cross-functional, hierarchies are a little bit more flatter, and remote work means that you can't really rely on proximity or power plays. So influence really is the new leadership. It's quiet, it's strategic, and it's absolutely essential.
Mike, please.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So again, glad to be here as well. Tony, outstanding intro. I would agree with all of that. I would certainly say that in your intro, we're kind enough to say that I've been doing this for a couple of decades. And a couple of decades ago, we lived in a very different world in terms of how influence happened. You probably have heard the term command and control, which meant that it was the person who had the formal authority that really made all the decisions. So influence was pretty straightforward. You know, I'm the manager, you're not, so you do what I say. Now, is that really influence? No. But you get the job done. Nowadays, as you already heard from Tony, organizations are flatter, people are more dispersed. Certainly, we know that we're living in this virtual world for many of us, and so it's hard to have that face-to-face connection. So it's really about getting your ideas accepted through influence in any direction. It's not just down. We often think of influence as sort of a leader influencing down, maybe sideways, but I would also stress that influence can move up. In other words, we all can have opportunities to influence our leaders and even our senior leaders, and trying to get our ideas disseminated and ultimately to influence decisions. For me, influence is all about the ability through your communication, through your relationships, through your knowledge. And I'll talk about each of these a little bit more as we get through our time today, in really trying to get others to accept your ideas and ultimately to be in a position to influence decisions. I would argue, as someone who's worked in leadership development for a long, long time, it may very well be one of the most important skills that anyone in an organization, whether they have formal authority or not, needs to develop and master in order to be effective.
Thank you both. Really, really powerful. And what you each shared really speaks to why this is so timely. Tony, I'm glad that you brought up, we're in a space right now where organizations are getting flatter. And sometimes growth doesn't look like that next title or position. Growth might look like my idea is the one that gets championed. And you shared something about getting things done through trust, not title. Could you chat a little bit more about that and maybe give a couple of examples of things that you've done that have helped build that trust?
Yeah, I think trust is crucial. And I think with anything in life, right? Trust, it takes time. To build trust, you have to execute, and you have to execute on the different KPIs that you have. And I think the more that you do that, whether that's in like your personal life, your professional life, any side projects that you have, that's when you can build your trust with those key stakeholders. And, you know, through my organization Swapped, I've had to do that a ton of times, right? If I'm coming to a potential nonprofit or a small business and I'm saying, hey, this is my vision, this is what I would like to see happen. Can you trust me to make this happen? If they do, and I execute right on what I say, I then can begin building up the trust with that organization, but also any other organization or nonprofit that I come to in the future.
Yeah, and one just quick follow-up there, especially as you've built new things. And I love that you called out that role as the founder of Swap. You're building these new relationships, and sometimes the trust comes from that past experience. So when you're new in a situation, what are some of the things that you have done as a new founder, as a new leader, to or even a new member of a team that can help establish that trust before they've seen you execute?
Yeah, and I know with Gen Zers and millennials today, we're always like, bring the receipts, your receipts matter. And it's true, your receipts do matter. But Angelina, like you say, what happens if you don't have those receipts specifically in your line of work or in that organization? I always say it's always about leading with like the why of anything that you're doing, right? Not just the logistics around what you're doing. It's super easy to get caught into the weeds of a certain project of how you're going to get it done. But most leaders are going to ask you why. And I feel like if you can really talk about the why of a certain decision that you're making or why you've chosen to do a certain thing, I think that that's one way to really to build that trust. And again, I can't emphasize it enough. The more that you execute and the more that you execute well, the more the trust will be built within your organization.
Thank you. And Mike, let's keep this masterclass going because I'm over here taking notes from some of what you all are sharing. This is really great. When we think about it from a coaching perspective, a lot of times we might see professionals feeling really disempowered if I don't have that title. From your perspective, what is a critical mindset shift someone needs to make to recognize and really effectively leverage the influence that they already possess, regardless of their position or their title? And Mike, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm speaking, but it doesn't look like I'm on mute. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we hear you.
Okay. So the first mindset I would say is, and I know this may sound simplistic, but is the actual belief that, in fact, you can influence others. And what I mean by that, chances are, no matter sort of where someone is in their career sort of evolution, even if they're in a more junior role, chances are they have probably had opportunities to influence others in some capacity. Whether it's going back to their college days and as a leader in a student organization, influencing others that are volunteers for that organization to get more actively involved. Whether it's going to your professor and saying, you know what, you gave me a B, and I think I deserve an A, and here's why.
Oh no. I think we lost him.
All right, it looks like we might have lost Mike temporarily. I'm sure he'll be rejoining us, but I love where he was going is calling out on those past examples in your life of where you have already established influence. And sometimes having that in the background can remind you when you walk into a new situation of new areas, right? So that's part of that mindset shift. And we'll hear more from Mike when he rejoins us. And Tony, when we think about influencing, doing this successfully often means overcoming resistance. And that is the hard part of the influencing, right? If someone is resistant to me or sometimes even worse, indifferent, especially when we think about your idea and what you've built, your vision, your company, reimagining concepts like clothing swaps. So can you think about a time when building your company, you faced pushback on an idea or an initiative, and walk us through how you strategically reframe that proposal?
Yeah, so one idea that really comes to mind that I got a little resistance on was my idea of bridging together tennis and a clothing swap together. So many of you on the call, you might be like, what? Like, how is that going to work? But I had it in my mind. I was like, I have to make this come to life. So really the idea was to bring a clothing swap onto the tennis courts. And I pitched the idea to like different tennis organizations. Each one was like, I'm not really understanding this vision. I'm sorry. We don't really want to work with you. And then an organization called Metro Sister Circle believed in the vision and they were like, let's do it. So we brought clothing swap to a tennis court. The women that signed up for the clothing swap got free tennis lessons. We swapped clothes on a tennis court, and it was just a really cool way to like meet new women in the city, refresh your wardrobe, and then also update your tennis skills. And I think what this taught me is, hey, like not everyone is going to believe in your vision, right? When you're the gig of influencing, you're not going to be able to influence everyone. So really leaning into those like key stakeholders that are like open to being influenced. And sometimes if you influence one person and they see that person signing off on an idea, the other person may be, inclined to help out as well. So the swing and swap, that event I was just referencing, while many people did not believe in it last year, many people came to me this year to partner on it again. So yeah, so sometimes don't feel bad if you can't influence someone or break the mold right away. It just takes time.
So it sounds like there just needs to be internally, you have to make sure you're really believing in the idea as well. That's really great. Now, Mike, you were chatting with us about some of the mindset shifts that need to be made, and it'd be great if, please keep going. We'd love to hear more.
Yeah, so sorry for the disconnection there. I'm not sure what happened, but and I'm not sure how much came through. But anyway, I think the first thing is just having the belief that you can do it, because chances are when you start to look at yourself and examine the influence potential you already have, you have probably earlier in your career, even if you're brand new or earlier in your life, certainly had opportunities to influence, whether it's going back and thinking about a student organization or club you're involved in and you had to influence your fellow classmates, whether it's trying to go back to your instructor and sort of request a higher grade than the one you deserve, whether you're successful or not in every single case, you probably were using influence, and you were probably trying to make a business case, articulate your rationale, which are all the important parts of influence. And chances are you've got that influence potential in you already. The key now, of course, in an organizational environment is to understand that the stakes are a little bit higher, that the people who are involved in making decisions typically are in positions of power and authority. But the process and the mindset, I think, of understanding that you have the ability to logically and with empathy lay out a case for the recommendation you're making or the suggestion you're trying to get adopted, the key is really learning how to do it and do it in an effective way through the use of effective data, through the use of storytelling in ways that kind of really resonate with your audience.
That's powerful. And I can definitely think about times where going back to previous situations may have inspired me to push through, right? When I'm looking to exert more influence. However, sometimes no matter how much I can remember times I've done it in the past or how much I believe in the why, what it boils down to are the people and the relationships. So Mike, I would love if you could just talk about that. When we think about influence, a key part of it are strong relationships. Absolutely. And what are some of the relationships, the non-obvious types that we should prioritize cultivating so that we can really maximize our ability to drive change, and some daily practices that can help nurture those relationships authentically?
Sure. And then you hit the nail on the head, Angelina. In fact, from what I sort of read and hear about the subject of influence, experts say there are really only two things that count. I think the first one's a little bit easier, and that is you have to know your stuff. You have to have some level of subject matter expertise. But these days, with the access to information and searching tools, and not even think about AI, to be able to get the information that you need to articulate your case is gotten easier and easier. The more challenging piece, and the piece that requires more effort, is exactly what you just touched on, the relationships. And listen, you can have all the best data, have the greatest story, and articulate that compelling message and still not get your idea accepted because there is no relationship. And in fact, going back to one of the things that Tony said earlier, trust, I would argue, is an even a more important ingredient to effective influence. If people trust you, they may be inclined to accept maybe the fact that all of your data isn't complete, or that your story doesn't sort of connect as emotionally as you might hope. But boy, if they trust you and you have a relationship, that's really absolutely critical. So how do you do that? Well, we all know that when it comes to this thing called organizational culture, it's not just the organizational boxes that tell you who does what and how things get done. It's that informal organization chart. It's knowing who the movers and shakers are and the people who can, through their own efforts, not only influence their target audiences, but probably can give you some good tips and maybe help you influence your efforts. And so working and just keeping your eyes open, talking with your manager, and really just getting a feel for who are those movers and shakers and looking for ways to attach with them more for the purposes of learning and observing. What are they doing that helps them be effective as influence? What's their messaging like and that encourages people to listen? And how can I sort of attach on to those kinds of individuals and help me grow my influence skills? Certainly, informal or formal mentoring can be great. So developing relationships or forming them with potential mentors can be great. Certainly, I would say that if you have the luxury of being able to work with a coach can certainly help you do some self-reflection, help you learn about how to master the skills and help you grow and develop. I know that's not always a luxury that we all have, but certainly they can be great resources. But most importantly, just keeping your eyes out and sort of understanding who are the people that seem to demonstrate this ability. Call it executive presence. They have the ability to command a room, and then just watching and learning. And to the extent that you can connect with those individuals and quiz them about how they got to where they are, what are the techniques they use, what makes them effective, and nurturing those relationships over time can help all of us develop our own influence skills more effectively.
And I love to chime in there when it comes to
Yeah.
relationships, right? I think when people think about like building relationships, people are usually thinking like short term, right? They go to a networking event and they're like, okay, how can I meet the most important person in the room? But a lot of these relationships, it takes time. It could take years and years and years and years.
Absolutely.
Until they can like help you out in your career. And I think trying to like jumpstart that can come off kind of like inauthentic. And Angelina, I'm sure you can see this as C-suite coach, like so many people you probably met that you work with now are probably people you met years and years ago, and you built that trust over time. And I would also say like building your relationships inside your organization are important, but leaning in on those people outside of your organization is going to be critical as well. Like, building those strong relationships outside of your organization and your industry. You just never know where those conversations, who they know, can lead you in your career.
Thank you for that. And I'd love if either or both of you could just dive a little bit deeper. If relationships are not, let's say, my area where I feel the most confident or my strength, what does that look like in practice to really cultivate those relationships over time? What are some daily practices? Because we know we need it to grow our influence, but what does it look like to you brought up authenticity, and I love that, Tony, to do that authentically. What does it look like?
I think for me, I'm based in New York City. So one thing I do to kind of like flex my social skills or like building relationships, it's just going to events that I don't know anyone at, right? The more that you can introduce yourself, go to an event that you don't know anyone, the better it's going to be when you need to like pitch an idea, because the first person that you need to pitch, or the first thing you need to pitch, is yourself. And if you're able to do that in any room that you walk into, you're already winning. I would say also, like, once you start building those relationships, you're going to start asking, hey, let's grab coffee, let's grab lunch. If these people are pouring into you with advice, you want to bring back receipts, right? Even if it's something small, if it's like, hey, we grabbed coffee one day and you mentioned that I should do this. I did this and this was the outcome. Okay, now that they feel like their advice is getting somewhere and they really feel like they can be a true mentor to you. Like when it comes to the National Leadership Council of SEO, one of my mentors, suggested that I join a junior board. I took about 6 months from that conversation to the time that I was on SEO, but to come back with those receipts, it really meant the world to him. He was like, wow, you took my advice, ran with it. And that was just from a brief relationship that we built over like 2 years or so.
Yeah. And touching on what you said earlier, Tony, about connecting outside of your organization, there is, not to say that it's unsafe, but there's I think a natural comfort that comes with connecting with people outside your organization. You don't have to worry about the power dynamics or the organizational structure, or whether anything you share in confidence with someone internally might leak up to higher levels. Where if you're connecting with people outside, it's just a much more natural environment. You also are able to find more like-minded people that you connect with more easily. One organization I'm connected with here in Los Angeles is the Los Angeles chapter of the National Black MBA Association. It's a collection of folks from business schools all around the country who live in LA, who get together for different programs and events. And it has been just an extremely valuable opportunity, as you said, Tony, to form relationships, not with any kind of sort of artificial attempt to, let me make sure I can get to know this person because I like his title and maybe he can influence, maybe my career direction, but because they just seem like really interesting people. And it's through that sort of more authentic and natural connection that you truly do learn about people. You can let your barriers down and let them get to know you as well. And oftentimes those authentic relationships form very naturally to the point where you are going out for those coffees. Maybe you're getting together, maybe one evening for dinner and getting to know someone at a deeper level. And of course, learning more about that person and more importantly, let that person know about you so that you can each, when I think about networking, and I think you all inherently know this, networking is about just not getting, it's about giving. So I think it's in those relationships that you learn that you can maybe offer someone some perspective or advice as much as you are receiving some knowledge and wisdom from someone else who's got some great experience.
Great call out in terms of places to build relationships. And that last piece that you shared, Mike, in networking isn't just about getting, it's also about giving. That brings me to something that is frequently left out of the conversation in influence. And that's how do we really help address the WIFM, because we're a WIFM culture, right? What's in it, or not, is it WIFM? What's in it for me?
That's it.
Yep.
WIFM, yeah.
So how have you all, Tony, if you could share some examples of how you've been successful in figuring out how to get to the what's in it for me to those that you are seeking to influence. And then following that, Mike, if you could share how you've worked with some clients so that they could gain and understand how or what's needed and what's important to those they seek to influence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, it all starts with just listening, right? Like every community, every organization has unofficial power players, right? The organizers, the connectors, the people that everyone trusts. So once you find them, you don't want to just lead with just like the pitch of your organization or what you're trying to do. You really want to lead with curiosity. You want to ask about what they care about, what their community needs, what are they looking for from you, and then tying back, whatever you're trying to pitch to them and their needs of the organization.
Yeah, when I think about coaching and the kind of support I've tried to offer clients around this particular topic, it's to go beyond the professional and really connect with people on a personal level. Whether it's something about their family situation or maybe the vacation they just came from. I heard earlier that Sandra just got back from France. One of the most important pieces of advice I got from a mentor of mine, which I try to use in my coaching, is, lead with the personal. That way you're letting people know that you have an interest in them, which is more likely to sort of help build and strengthen that relationship and make the influence effort a little bit easier. Whether, again, chances are in our daily interactions with people, we learn certain things about someone. So if I know I've got to eventually develop the kind of relationship with Sandra that I know is going to be important in our relationship, simply asking her about, hey, how was your trip in France last week? How did it go? And not just doing it for superficial reasons. I know you mentioned authenticity earlier, Anjali, but expressing a genuine interest. Oh, what did you do? Where'd you go? Did you go to that museum? That's great. Tell me all about it. And once you begin to help people see that you have a genuine interest in them as people and not just what I would call influence targets, chances are when you're ready to shift your efforts to a more influence-focused message, that relationship has already been built because you've communicated that you're interested in what they have to offer and who they are as people. I think all too often we rush to the message, right? And got this idea, I've got this great concept, let me make the pitch. But if that relationship isn't cemented, and if you don't know the people that you're talking with, it's probably, even if it's very logically thought out, it may not be as effective as you might hope.
I'm glad you shared that, Mike. And since we're talking about mindset shifts, or we were earlier, that was a big mindset shift for me, right? Work can be really mundane. We can be inundated with priorities and meetings, and it feels like you're moving from one thing to the next. But that personal piece, a shift for me was, this is an opportunity for me to be curious and learn something or engage with something. So bringing in that personal, where maybe my social style is just to be more direct and get to the business, actually gave me a break and allowed me to flex and be curious in a way that actually facilitated better relationships. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
And one last thing, that this piece of advice I got from the same mentor said, Mike, two of the best conversations you can ever have with people is to ask them on a Friday afternoon, what are you doing over the weekend? And to store that away. And on Monday, hey, ask them, hey, how did that go? And in doing so, you are displaying your genuine interest in their lives. So, oh, Johnny had a soccer tournament last Saturday. Hey, how did it go? Did he win? Oh yeah, he kicked the winning goal. That's great. That's so exciting. But again, do it with a sense of genuineness, not just for the sake of trying to, sort of add some tools to your toolkit.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And Tony, when we talk about influence, one thing that stands out to me is you really inspire community to invest time and energy voluntarily. That requires some influence, right? What are some of the most effective ways you found to articulate the why to them behind your events and your initiatives? And how do you make your mission compelling enough that people want to share their time freely with you?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Honestly, I've really found, and I mentioned this earlier, that people don't really rally around logistics. They rally around like the vibes or the values of the organization. So when I talk about Swapped, I could easily say something like, I am Tony Pringley. I am the founder of Swapped and I host clothing swaps. Like, okay, that's great. But like, again, that why. So you really want to come to kind of like rethink your mission, your vision, and also your pitch. So instead of saying, hey, I'm Tony Brinkley, I host clothing swaps, I'll say, hey, like, come to one of our swapped events where we really rethink how we consume, our clothing and how we connect and how we, show up for our communities. And then also you get a great outfit. So really the why has to feel personal and alive to the person for them to volunteer their time to volunteer with Swap, but also take time out of a weekend to come to one of your swapped events. So also I make our events very fun, right? Sustainability, especially in the fashion space, can feel very like heavy or exclusive, but we flip it, right? At Swapped, it's stylish, it's joyful, it's community led, and really people show up and they see themselves within our mission and the vision.
And what I really appreciate about that is you're also bringing, when we talk about this theme of authenticity, you're bringing true elements of you into it. And that's something that I have found has been interesting in an influencing journey as well, is how do I get others engaged with the unique things about myself that they may want to know more about, whether that's art collecting or something else. And we bond over that experience, and that can help bring us closer when it comes to business. So great call out there. And Mike, when we are facing skepticism or pushback, when we're sharing an idea, I want to advocate for something at work, I want to launch a new nonprofit, I want to get people behind my idea, I might get some pushback or skepticism, and that can really affect my confidence to keep going. Can you share any examples of when you work with clients where they struggle to gain traction and how they manage that resistance?
Yeah. I just want to say one thing about that last comment you just made about art as an example. And you may remember when the first time we met in Los Angeles and you were asking things to do and you said you were into art. And I got excited and I started sharing all these resources, many more than you probably ever had time to do, but it just goes to that sense of connection. But yeah, in response to your question, absolutely. I think this is a common experience that we probably all face. I think even the most successful influencers at some point in their careers are going to encounter some resistance. And when I coach leaders around resistance, I try to help them understand that, yeah, maybe there may be some individuals that just have difficult personalities, but by and large, chances are the resistance is not directed towards you, the individual, it's the idea. So I try to get people to realize that if at all possible, they shouldn't take it personally. And what the resistance was all about is that for whatever reason, the person either was unclear about your influence effort, or maybe just had a different take. And so if you can begin to start with not making it personal, then it's the next strategy is about, okay, what is it about the message that was maybe less effective or less complete or less impactful? And then it's about doing some, I like to use the term after action review. As soon as someone has made an effort to influence someone else, let's sit and talk about it and talk about what do you think that you did well in that delivery and what might you do differently? And then to look for other sources of information that can help you validate your assessment. Was anyone else in the room that heard this message and could give you some really candid and constructive feedback that you can use? But to really do that sort of dissection of, hey, what is it about the message that maybe wasn't getting through that you might do differently or have done differently in a way that could have made it a lot more effective?
I am over here just silently jumping up and down and clapping, because what you shared also, just as I reflect on my own journey, reflects big shifts, right? When you take things personally less, then what ends up happening is the time that I need to bounce back or recover actually decreases significantly. And we can get back to the business, because now I'm just thinking about a revised strategy or how to win and how to jump into action. I'm not thinking I didn't win, I didn't get it right. And that can be very transformative. So thank you for sharing that. And then Tony, I would love to just hear if you have any thoughts on that as well, just around some of the ways you have changed your self-talk or some of your mindset shifts when you have encountered resistance.
Yeah, I think, Mike, what you said, it's so true. Like, taking things personally it's so easy to do, especially when it's your idea. It feels personal to you if someone doesn't believe in it. But it's like you and Angelina said, like, it's not personal. It's just the idea. And maybe what this person is thinking is what a wide array of people are thinking. So then you're honestly helping yourself and tailoring your pitch for the next person. And honestly, I say feedback really is a gift. Some people will just not even tell you the idea is not well and just ghost and be like, we're not interested. But someone who's able to step up and say, well, actually, maybe you should change this, tweak that. It's actually the best thing that someone can do. So if someone is taking time to give you feedback, don't take it personally. It's more like a thank you for taking the time that they gave you for that feedback.
Thank you both. And I see in the chat, someone wrote, Andrea says, we didn't know we were having church today. So what you all are saying is definitely resonating. Thank you. And by the way, those in the chat, please do drop in your questions. Yes, Marcel says feedback is just data. That's a practice, right? Maybe it's hard to take that in the first time, but with practice, you can change your mindset on that. Please do drop in your questions as well. We want to hear what's top of mind for you. And thank you. And as we're just getting to the audience questions in just a bit, we talked about why this is especially important now. There is a lot of transformation happening across pretty much every organization. I see it every day as we're connecting with different companies, and you can see it. You can see that there's change. Really, it's abundant right now. So to navigate this moment, what's one pivotal strategy or mindset we can start to embrace, to adopt, to make sure that we're not just maintaining, but really enhancing our ability to influence in times of significant change? Mike, go ahead. I see you.
Yeah, happy to jump in. One of the things I think about, and this may be particularly useful for, I think, younger members of the workforce. First of all, the recognition that we all have something to offer. We all have certain skills, we all have certain abilities, certain experiences that can be of value. And one of the things that I have certainly observed as someone who I would describe as less technologically proficient, evidence me getting booted out of the room earlier, is that the 26-year-old and 24-year-old children I have are amazing with technology. And what I would say is that they have been able, not with any intentional effort, is to really think about the value of that skill set. And in each of them in their respective organizations have brought that skill, that facility, in ways that help older professionals really not only be able to adopt the technology, but at the same time, form relationships with them. And again, it's never been any kind of intentional effort, but it is, I think, when I sit down and talk with them and I talk about, you need to realize that you're bringing something to the table. We all have that ability, whether it's a skill that we have, maybe it's a knowledge area that we've dug deep into understanding that we can add value. And, many of you may have heard of the concept of strengths. There's an assessment called the Strengths Finder, which helps people measure their strengths. The idea of the strengths is that we all will be much more effective if we leverage those strengths to the fullest extent. Now, of course, we can't do that unless we know what those strengths are, but we have them. So I always encourage folks, particularly younger folks that I have a chance to work with, to really dig down deep inside and understand the strengths that they bring to their respective organizations. And as best they can, leverage them in every single way. And that way you're going to stand out. You're going to develop a little bit more credibility because of that particular strength. And the benefit is also you'll form some relationships that will help support your future influence efforts.
Yeah, and totally agree with that, Mike. I think leaning into your strengths really is key, especially when it comes to finding that, dream role for yourself. Sometimes you just may not be in the correct role that's leveraging your strengths. And I think some of us are like, oh my gosh, I just, don't like working, or I just don't like this organization, but maybe you're just not in the right role in that organization. And then it starts with those relationships. Maybe you go to different coffee chats, learn more about the roles within the organization, outside of your organization, that then leverages those strengths that you have. And I'm also, a big advocate on advocating for yourself and talking about your strengths really vocally. I'm a huge LinkedIn girl. I just reached 10K followers last month. So I'm always posting on LinkedIn about different things I'm doing, different things I'm up to, because to be honest, I can't wait for my organization to do it. Like, I have to do it for myself. I have to advocate for myself and talk about my strengths externally, because no one else is going to do it for me.
And on top of that, Tony, and I imagine this is also part of your efforts in organizations, if we know our strengths, then we should also be doing is not just advocating, but looking for projects that are coming down the pike that we can get involved in. Projects to give us a chance to fully leverage those strengths, and also at the same time maybe get some visibility to other people that can learn about what we can bring to the organization.
That is great. And Tony, you are inspiring us all. Everybody, make sure you check out Tony's LinkedIn so we can keep that following going and growing. And I know we have some questions from the audience. Keep them coming. I will take them in just a second. I had one more question, and then we'll move to audience. But as we think about, when you all talk about going with your strengths, I always look at that as going with gravity, right? That's really what leaning into your strengths feels like. And that's similar when we're in a position where we have to influence people we already have great relationships with. But what about, I won't say we have any ops. There's no real ops in my opinion, but sometimes it can feel like it, that person at work who feels like our op, but they're a critical piece of the puzzle to making sure that our ideas are executed. How do we deal with influence when we don't have the relationship we want with the people? And we've tried, but we don't have it with the people we need to influence. Any ideas there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say potentially if there is someone in your organization that does have a strong relationship with them, that may be on your team, that is able to not take your idea, but obviously say this is so-and-so's idea, but be able to tailor the message to that person. Because I always say sometimes it's not the message, it's the messenger. Someone may shoot down your idea because it's coming from you, not because it's the idea. So sometimes you may just have to pivot the messenger, not the message.
That's perfect. I mean, I was going to say the same thing. It's that sort of indirect influence, right? We can use other, I would call the term champions of our ideas to influence someone else in ways. And if we're not overly hung up on the fact that I need to take credit, no, it's my idea, I need to be out there. If we're truly committed to the principle of the idea, then it doesn't necessarily have to be us to make that influence. The other thing I try to do, and you know this all too well, Angeline, as well, I am always trying to, going back to leveraging the strength, connect with people in ways that might provide me with some access through that strength. And one of the ways I do that is, and you know this, right? I always have this philosophy, there's an article for that. I have this vast library of digital articles just about on any topic of leadership. So if I run into someone that I feel may be a little bit of a tougher nut to crack, but I learned something about that individual and what he or she may be struggling with, I will try to find something in my library to say, you know what, we've talked about this before. I know you're struggling. I've got an article I'm going to send your way that I think really hits the nail as to what you shared with me. And I'm pretty good at that, quite frankly. I'm pretty good at listening to what people need and finding something in my resource kit that I can leverage. And I find that can maybe soften the ice. So whether it's something that's that approach or any other approach that we may bring that leverages our strengths, chances are if we can do that in a supportive way, in a way that's all about helping the other person be successful, I find that can thaw the ice a little bit. But it does, as you said, Tony, it takes time, right? It's not something that you expect that's going to turn around in a matter of a few days.
Absolutely. I love it. So I'm hearing find a champion. Sometimes it's not the message, it's the messenger. I'm also hearing find ways to try to break through and soften the ice. That sounds really great. And the one I would just add is be curious. Sometimes when you have friction with a personality, it might come from even our own, we don't recognize it in ourselves, but our own previous experiences with someone like that person, or we don't know what we may be projecting on them. So being curious and trying to build that relationship from a place of curiosity can really help. Now we have two audience questions I want to get to. When we talked about how to leverage or deal with, rather, manage resistance, one of the things that came up was taking feedback. And so Sarah asked, how should one deal with feedback that lacks concrete examples or is just noise?
Go ahead, Tony.
I was going to say, so for me, I feel like feedback is a two-way street, right? Someone's giving you feedback and I feel like you're able to either rebuttal, accept what they're saying, or then ask follow-up questions. So I feel like if someone's giving you feedback and they're not giving you those concrete examples, the floor is yours to be able to ask those questions, those follow-up questions. Then if they're not able to give that concrete examples, maybe you should be a little, suspicious of where the feedback is coming from. But it's like what I said earlier, like maybe their feedback is not coming from the idea. Maybe it's because you're giving this idea or you've done something and maybe they have some type of friction with you, not necessarily the message or your idea. And that's why they can't give the concrete feedback. And I'm sure we've seen this at work. One person gives an idea and it's like, another person gives the same idea and it's taken on. So it's the same kind of idea there.
That's great.
Absolutely. And you use the word noise. That's not feedback. That's not feedback. There are some, best practices around feedback. And I think probably, Edgley, I know you know the SBI model. We always talk about great feedback has to include what's the specific reference, what's the behavior you saw, and what impact did that have? If someone just tells you, you know what, you weren't really organized in your presentation, and that's not feedback, that's just noise. But if someone says, when you got to the conclusion, you didn't really articulate what the next steps were, so people walked out of the meeting unclear is what to do with the information they got, well, that's feedback. And sometimes what we can do and should do is if we find someone is unskilled at giving feedback, maybe we can help them get better by asking for it, but ideally asking for it in advance in a way that helps set them up for giving quality feedback. Hey, listen, I'm going to give this presentation. Here's what I'd like to ask you to look for. Am I looking at the entire audience? Am I answering questions effectively? Are my slides organized in a way that are very clear for the audience? That way, the feedback you get has already been sort of planned out in advance, so the feedback giver should be able to deliver that feedback in a way that's much more valuable.
Thank you. That is good, both of you. All right. And we have another question from Anika. What's the best way to drive buy-in for process improvements when facing resistance? I'm looking for ways to show how small adjustments can lead to big time savings for a larger organization.
I
You
would
want me to
say,
start that? Yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
I
No,
would
go
say,
ahead.
if there's a process that you can potentially start working on now and then bring those receipts back and be like, hey, I tried this new process. This is, the way that it's worked. This is how it's increased, XYZ. Then I think that would help instead of, just not having those receipts or the trust within the organization.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of process improvement methodologies or tools the questioner is asking about, but there are formal tools that can help make your case. So the more I think we can bring discipline to our process improvement recommendations around, what are the mechanics of the process that need to be improved, what steps need to be taken, and most importantly, can we, and this may be easier or challenging, can we predict the outcomes of the process improvement effort in some hopefully realistic and accurate way? Yes, this process will help reduce expenses by 10%. Yes, this process will improve efficiency by 8%. Some of the best process improvement tools are out there help you develop that sort of measurable plan into your recommendations. But ultimately, if you're going to make that case, if you've got some compelling data that your process improvement will generate for the organization, that can be hard for someone, even the most skeptical folks, to turn down.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would just add is bring it back to the WIFM, because a lot of times when we're facing resistance, and as the idea starter or the one who has the idea, the value of it. What's happening is the person on the other end is like, how much work is this going to take me? Or is this going to add more to my plate? I already have so much. So if you can clearly express how what it will not take out of them and what will be covered, or the small shifts they had to make. It sounds like you're saying there's some small shifts that will lead to bigger change. Really helping them understand how little is required of them could help. And then cost of inaction is another great way to start to frame it for them. We have a couple more questions. So one, I want to make sure we get to Kaylin. Please share some additional strategies for managing up with leaders in your organization. Tony and Mike, if you could each give me 2 just quick managing up strategies.
Mike, you want to go?
Yeah, that's, first of all, I'd say that's a whole nother chat session. So put that on the calendar. No, honestly, it is, because it's not just about influence. It's a lot of other things. It's performance management, it's goal setting, it's relationship management, it's all of that stuff. But the things that come to mind first and foremost is understanding your boss's agenda. Let me speak that specifically, but going beyond that, it's not just your boss. I don't know if the asker is asking about managing up in terms of your direct boss or more broadly, but certainly for your direct manager, understand his or her agenda, his or her style and priorities, and make sure that you are acting in a way that is consistent with that. Managing up outside of your direct manager goes back to what we've talked about very much is relationship building, right? People are going to find it hard to accept your influence unless you know something about them and there is some form of relationship that's key. If you have that relationship, even if you, as I said earlier, know about their personal lives or something about them that you can show definite interest in and as you said, curiosity about, I think that certainly is going to help. But again, as Tony has said already a couple of times, this is not a quick thing. It's a long-term effort. And so we have to be authentic. We have to truly care and do it for all the right reasons, not because we're trying to win favor.
Yeah, and I would say for me, it's all about communicating proactively with your manager, your boss, right? Don't wait to be asked, provide, those regular updates to them. And then also just anticipate their needs. Like you know your boss, or you should know your boss well enough to know what questions they're going to be asking, what problems do you see coming with certain ideas, anticipate those, and then create solutions.
And I also will highlight one of the things you said earlier, Tony, as well, which is speaking to what your strengths are, because the people who are working with you, especially leaders, can frequently forget. So the more that you're highlighting for them what your strengths are, the more that it'll be top of mind for them. And I'd add, in addition to your strengths, also your wins and your impact. That's tied to what with Mike shared, that agenda that's very clear to you. And we have a comment, and if there's any last questions, we have time for one more. But the comment comes from Stephanie. I've learned integrity and character build trust. Having been a SW salesman when the federal government and system integrator space within the federal government and system integrator space for over 20 years. It really has resonated and benefited me well, especially having the same customers over the years, working for different companies and selling their respective brands. Absolutely. So integrity and character building. Yeah.
Could that questioner also elaborate what SW means? I assume it might be Southwestern, the company Southwestern, but I don't want to make assumptions.
I'm so sorry. Software.
Software.
Okay, got
Yes.
it.
Thank
Okay.
you for sharing that. Great.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, perfect.
I love that. See,
Mhm.
curiosity. Mike is all
Yeah.
on it. He's building that
Yeah.
relationship with Stephanie already. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Well, I see that we don't have any more questions, but I will just take time. Any final words of encouragement? It's a challenging season, and we're all looking to really grow in our influence. So if each of you could just share one final tip or encouraging piece on how we can keep growing our influence.
I mean, I'll go back to a major theme in today's conversation, building relationships. Relationships are really going to carry you inside and outside of your career. So really being proactive with building relationships inside of your organization, those that do not sit in your same, line of work, and be curious when you are building those relationships. And then also understand that building relationships takes time. It could take years and years and years. So start now.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and as you just learning and development experience, and the encouraging news I would leave with everyone is that this is a skill that is learnable. And I have seen and worked with and coached leaders over time and seen them grow that influence muscle, if you will. Yes, it takes some work. And again, as Tony said, it takes some relationship building, but it also takes a great deal of self-reflection in really thinking through why did that work? What did I do that made that influence effort successful and that one less successful? What do I do differently? It's an ongoing, within the development effort, it's an ongoing process. But the good news is we can all get better at it with time.
That is absolutely right and critical, and a great note to end on. Mike and Tony, thank you so much for all you shared. Tony, I'm glad to be one of your 10K LinkedIn followers because you're certainly very inspiring. And Mike, I'm privileged to work with you as one of our C-suite coaches. So thank you both so much for all you shared. As always, we will put the recording on our LinkedIn and also our YouTube channel. So check that out. And I would love to just thank you all for attending, and I'll kick it back over to Sandy for final words from the New York Urban League.
Yes, this was such a great conversation. Thank you so much, Angelina, Tony, and Mike. I cannot wait for August 4th. The topic for conversation is from vision to execution. And I look forward to continuing the conversation and also this amazing partnership between the New York Urban League and C-Suite Coach. Have an amazing rest of your day, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Send license. Oh, you're going.